Hello, welcome to this video. We've moved, and this is actually the first time I have ever moved in my life, so it's been interesting. It's still kind of a mess, but it's been interesting. And my shelf is still pretty empty because I want to move some things around and change how I organize some of the books, so it's pretty sparse in this area, but at least I finally have them together as I've been wanting to have it for years. So at least there's that. And I really like the way it looks so far. But that's not the point of this video. Today, I want to start my third attempt, I think, at a reading vlog because I'm currently reading City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. I know, okay, I know I'm extremely late to the party. The party has ended decades ago and I'm just arriving. But at least I'm here now. And yes, I'm reading this for the first time. It's not a reread. I think this is going to be quite a long intro because I want to explain my whole journey with this series. So I read City of Bones for the first time. I think it was back in 2013 and I really liked it. So I immediately bought City of Ashes and I started reading it. And I read the prologue and I think I read chapter 1. And then I stopped and the book went back to the shelf. And then months went by and I was like, oh, you know what? I should probably get back to reading City of Ashes. But then at that point, I didn't remember anything anymore. So I had to restart from the beginning. So I read the epilogue again. And then I reread chapter 1. And then I stopped. And the book went back to the shelf. And I cannot tell you how many times this happened over the course of years. And then at some point, I just kind of gave up. And it just sat on the shelf untouched for months and years on end. Because every time I tried getting back into it, I don't know what was happening. I just couldn't do it. And I would just always reread the epilogue and the first chapter to the point that I couldn't even stand them anymore. But then, back in 2022, when I decided that I was fed up with not being able to read properly anymore, I think I came across something related to the motor instruments online, or something popped up on one of my timelines. And it made me want to start reading them again. And I'm gonna be completely honest, one of the main reasons why I decided to actually get back into this series was because of Jace. I know he's not great, okay, but I do like him, but also I'm mostly intrigued by him because I don't know anything about his story. I don't know how, but even after all of this time, I have never been spoiled for anything major in the Mortal Instruments or the Infernal Devices. All I know is that Jace is Jace Herondale, because, that name would pop up everywhere on Tumblr. And I think that's it. All I know is that he's Jace Herondale and that he and Clary might not actually be related. But I don't know anything else. I don't know who's his father. I don't know who's his mother. I don't know anything about anything. But I'm actually very curious about it. I want to know the truth. I want to know what everybody else knows. So that's why I decided to get back into the series. That's the main reason why I decided to get back into the series. So I reread City of Bones in 2022. And then I read, finally, after 10 years, I read City of Ashes. I managed to actually finish the book for the first time after 10 years. I think I finished at the start of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was January. And then, because I was on that hype of, I just finally finished the first book, I want to immediately jump into City of Glass. So I went online to buy a copy. But here's the thing, and this might actually be an unpopular opinion, but I don't actually hate the original covers. And I don't really like the new covers. I love the spines on the new covers, but the covers itself, I don't love them. And I don't really have that much of a problem with the original covers, with people on it. And I already had the first 2 books in the original cover, so I wasn't going to replace them just to buy the new editions, So now every time I have to buy a new one to keep reading, I buy it from a secondhand bookshop. So that's what I did. I went to a website that has like a bunch of different secondhand bookstores online. And I found one that seemed to be in pretty good condition and I bought it. And when the book got here, like a week later, it was the wrong book. They sent me City of Fallen Angels instead. So I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to send it back and ask them to send me the right book, City of Glass. But then I went to look at the store's catalog online and they didn't have City of Glass anymore. So I don't know if they sold the copy that they actually had to someone else, or if they never had a City of Glass copy and it was just City of Fallen Angels and they just had it registered with the wrong name. I have no idea what happened. So then I thought, you know what? This is the next book that I'm gonna have to read and buy after the Infernal Devices, so I'm just gonna keep it, and I'm gonna get a City of Glass from a different secondhand bookstore. That's fine. And then I did. I found another one, but then it took them 2 weeks just to ship the book to me. I don't know what happened. This never happens with this website. Everything is always so fast, but this time specifically, it took them 2 weeks just to send me the book. And then it took like another week, I think, for the book to get to me. And by that point, it had already been a month since I have finished City of Ashes, so the hype had kind of died down, and I had already moved on to a new series and a new obsession. So the books, again, sat here on the shelf for over a year. But now that we've moved, we have a really nice space outside that I can sit in and read, which I've actually been doing since we got here, which is really, really nice. And I think on the second week that we got here, I was looking at my shelves and I was thinking, okay, what do I want to read? And I really felt like reading City of Glass, so I picked it up. And now I'm reading it, and I'm actually reading it. And it's been fun, which it always is with this series, because I don't think these are great books. Back when I read City of Bones for the first time, I loved it. I thought it was one of the best things ever. When I read it in 2022, I was like, okay, it's not that great, but it's so entertaining. I have so much fun reading these books, and honestly, that's all that matters to me right now. So I had already been thinking about making a reading vlog for every single book that I still have left to read in the series, because I think it's going to be a fun experience, both filming and reading it. But nothing really major was happening in City of Glass to the point I'm at right now. I'm currently on page 81, I think. Yes, I'm on page 81, chapter 4. But now, something has happened. Something possibly Jace related. So I wanted to film this intro to finally start talking about what is going on. Also, there was one specific line a few pages back that was just so extremely funny to me. So it's on page 50, and it's Isabel, Jace, Simon, Sebastian, and Aline. They're all together in this room, and Simon has just recently been turned into a vampire. So Aline asks him what it's like being a vampire, and then Isabel goes, Aline, you can just go around asking people what it's like to be a vampire. And that immediately threw me back to, oh my god, Karen, you can just ask people why they're white. That was so funny. That was just so ridiculously funny to me. But yeah, like I said, I'm currently on page 81, chapter 4, and something has just been revealed. And I have a lot of questions. Oh, by the way, this reading vlog is going to have spoilers, so if someone watching this still also haven't read the Mortal Instruments and you still want to, just be warned, there's going to be spoilers. So just to explain the context of what's been happening up until the point that I'm at right now. So Luke and Clary got to Idris, but they want to get to Alicante and they're not directly into the city yet. She created a portal that she wasn't really supposed to, so the portal threw them into Lake Lynn, which was probably like the closest point to the city that the portal could get them to. But it turns out that the water from this lake is poisonous to shadow hunters, and Clary swallowed like a bunch of it when she fell into the lake. So now she's kind of dying, and Luke is trying to rush her to someone's house in the city that he knows. Also, something that has been bothering me is the fact that they just went into the city through the barrier. Like, they see the north gate or something, right? And Luke tells Clary that if he had the papers and the authorization to get into the city officially, that's where they would go in. But he doesn't actually have permission to be there right now, so he doesn't have official papers or anything. So they kind of sneak around the perimeter and they enter through the barrier. And I also have a lot of questions about that. Everyone makes such a big deal of Alicante being this super mega extremely well guarded city, but then they just go in through the barrier and nothing happens. I was expecting something to happen, like alarms blaring or someone to be warned and for them to be caught as soon as they stepped onto the street, but not. They got to where they wanted to go extremely easily, and I don't know if something's going to happen later down the road in the book regarding them trespassing into the city, but if it doesn't, I feel like that's a major plot hole. Like, what's the point of you showing twice in the span of maybe like 30 to 40 pages the demon towers of Alicante that keep everyone who isn't allowed out of the city, only to then have them sneak into the barrier. I don't know, maybe it's just me being stupid and missing something, but I don't think that's the case. So anyway, like I was saying before, Clare is basically dying because she swallowed the lake water, which is poisonous to shadow hunters. So Luke is carrying her to someone's house that he knows in the city, and they finally get there. She takes them in, and as it turns out, it has just been revealed. She is Luke's sister, and her name is Amatys Herondale. Amatys, I don't know. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but she's a Herondale. So I have a lot of questions. Is she a Herondale by birth? And if so, that would also make Luke a Herondale. But I know for a fact that his last name is not Herondale. I don't remember for the life of me what his last name is, but I know it's not that. So it got me thinking, did he maybe change his name when he was banished from Idris when he turned into a werewolf? I don't think that's the case. He tells the whole story in City of Bones, but at this point I don't remember the details very well anymore. I don't think he's changed his name, but I don't know, it could be a possibility. The second question is, if she's not a Herondale by birth, then she married into the Herondale family. Who the hell did she marry to? How are they related to Jace? Because if Luke is married, no, not married, I'm sorry. If Luke's sister is a Herondale, then Luke by some extent has to be related to Jace, right? Because Jace is a Herondale. I don't know how yet, or why, or by whom, but he is a Herondale. So they have to be related in some shape, way, or form. And I'm just really curious to know more about his sister. But yeah, I just had to stop and film after I got to the session because, like I said, I don't know anything about this series. Surprisingly, I have not been spoiled for anything. I'm in the dark, which I'm very glad to be. I'm just really curious and really intrigued, and I really want to keep reading, and I'm going to do so. There was also the whole thing with Imogen in City of Ashes, who was the Inquisitor at the time, and she was also a Herondale. And during the battle on Valentine's ship, she saw a birthmark, I think, on Jace, and it shook her to her core. And then she said something to him that we, the audience, obviously don't know yet what it is, and then promptly died. So there's also that. I also can't remember if Luke and Imogen ever interacted in City of Ashes. I think they must have, right? They were two very prominent characters in that book. But if they did, I don't know if he knew she was a Herondale. I can't remember any of that because it's been over a year since I finished the book at this point. But I just have a lot of questions. And I don't have the answers for now, but I think maybe I'll start to get some at some point. I don't know, but I'm very intrigued. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's just very entertaining at this point. My cat almost fell into one of the boxes. Right now, I think Simon is about to go to Shadowhunter prison because they don't trust a vampire that can walk in the sun. And I know that that's going to happen because it's in the blurb in the back of the book, and I read the blurb before starting to read the book. And you know, the chapter is called Daylighter, and it keeps switching between Luke and Clary at his sister's house and Simon, so I'm pretty sure that's about to happen because the new Inquisitor was acting very weird, suspiciously friendly when he came to talk to Simon, so I think he's about to be thrown in jail. I also don't love the fact that Simon is a vampire. I don't know if I'm ever gonna love the fact that Simon is a vampire, but for the moment, I'm still not a big fan of it. I really like Simon as a human, you know, as like the only human in this world of creatures and warlocks and mages and whatever. It's kind of like Sokka in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Part of his charm is the fact that he's not a bender in the world of benders, and especially in this tight group of super benders, he's the one who isn't. And I keep thinking about that meme with the big book and the tiny book. And someone made a version for Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was the big book, just Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the really tiny slim book, it's Avatar: The Last Airbender if Sokka was a bender. And I feel like it's that for Simon. I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me, and that's how I feel about it right now. Maybe I'll come around on it at some point, but for the moment, I would have preferred if he had stayed a human. But yeah, like I said, I think he's about to be thrown in Shadowhunter jail, so I'm gonna keep reading to find out and see what happens. And I'll come back when something else happens or when there's something that I want to update on. Hello again. It's been a week now, so I guess the only consistent thing about my reading vlogs is that I'm incredibly inconsistent with updating them. To be fair, I haven't read all that much, but I'm now on page 133 and there have been some developments, so I wanted to pop in here to talk about them. So Clary talked to Amatis, I don't know, I still don't know how to pronounce her name, but they talked and it was kind of the more obvious of the two options that I had last week, which is that Luke's sister married into the Herondale family. She married Stephen, who was the Inquisitor's son. She was Stephen's first wife, but then Valentine chose him to be like his second in command, and he didn't want them to be married anymore because he didn't think it was a good idea for someone so close to him as his advisor to be married to someone who had a werewolf in the family, obviously, because it's Valentine. So he made them get an annulment, and then he found a new wife for Stephen, who then killed herself. So yeah. Also, I would like to correct myself because I said in the intro clip that Luke was banished from Idris. He wasn't. I don't know where I got that from. I just honestly couldn't remember what happened to him after the uprising, and it didn't seem that crazy of an idea that he might have been banished considering he was a werewolf and he helped plan the whole thing. But he wasn't banished, he just fled to Paris with Jocelyn. At this point, it's been almost 3 years since I reread City of Bones, so I'm kind of iffy on some of the details, so it really was just a problem of memory. I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry about that. Oh, something else that I forgot to talk about in the introduction is that the Shadowhunters believe that Valentine is now after the third mortal instrument, which is a mirror. But there's this whole dialogue, again with Jace, Sebastian, Isabel, and Aline, in which they tell Simon that not only does no one know where the mirror is, they actually don't even know what it is. And the way the whole thing was phrased and the way they were talking about it makes me think that it doesn't necessarily need to be an actual mirror, it can just be a reflective surface. And the very first thing that Clary thinks about Lake Lynn, you know, as she's plummeting towards it, is that it looks like a mirror. This is the first line in the paragraph. It says, "Something flat and hard and silvery, like the surface of a mirror, rose up in front of her." And then I went back to check something else, and when Luke is telling Clary about the story of Lake Lynn, he tells her that it is poisonous to Shadowhunters but not to Downworlders, and that the fairies drink the water from Lake Lynn because it gives them true visions, and the fairies literally call the lake Mirror of Dreams. So if Lake Lynn isn't the mirror, or if it isn't even related to that, at least a little bit, this is gonna be the biggest red herring that I've read in a few years. I'm like 98% sure that I'm right and that Lake Lynn is going to be the mirror, but I'm never right about these things. I never guess these things correctly when I'm reading books, like everything just goes over my head. But I do feel pretty confident about this one, but I'm not entirely sure. They also keep mentioning that Shadowhunter motif with the angel rising out of the lake with the mortal cup in one hand and the sword in the other. I think they've mentioned it twice already. The first one was again when Luke is telling Clary about the story of the lake and she remembers that she saw that image on the ground of the Institute, if I'm not mistaken, on the floor. And then Simon sees it in a painting in the room that the Inquisitor takes him to. So this lake has been mentioned quite a few times already in just this much of the book for it to not be more relevant than just being there for Clary to fall into and almost drown. So yeah, I'm pretty confident in this one. But if I'm wrong, we're just gonna pretend I didn't say anything. As for Simon, my poor Simon. He is in jail. He was thrown into Shadowhunter prison because the Inquisitor wants him to cooperate. The new Inquisitor is pretty weird. The last one also had her issues, but you know, she was racked with grief and possibly PTSD, so there was a reason as to why she was acting the way she acted. This guy though, I don't know. I don't know anything about him very well yet, but I don't trust him. And I know you're not supposed to trust him, but he is a weird guy. He keeps interrogating Simon because he wants to know what happened on the ship, but the things that he asked Simon that he was truthful about, he doesn't believe him. He thinks Simon is lying. But then there's also this whole other side of the story that technically Simon actually can tell the Inquisitor, and so he's withholding that information. The Inquisitor knows that Simon is not telling him everything, so now he's gonna start to starve Simon until he starts cooperating. You know, he wasn't even supposed to be there. He wasn't even supposed to be in Idris. That's just unfair. That's just unfair. Oh, there's also one more thing that I did not connect the dots on before. You see, that's why I have to stop taking such long breaks in between these books, because I keep forgetting stuff. I did not remember that when Simon first turned, he could not go out into the sunlight. It actually did hurt him for a while, and I think I have this scene in like the very back of my mind where he was skipping school and lying to his mom, saying that he was sick. And I think Clary went to visit him one time at night, and he was very depressed about the whole thing. But then there was the whole battle on the ship, and then he could walk in the sunlight. And I only clocked this about like half a page before Simon realized it himself. But the one thing that changed, and that was different, was that when he was on the ship, he drank Jace's blood. Valentine drained Simon's blood for the ritual, and so he was about to die, but then Jace gave him some of his blood. And after that, Simon was able to walk in the sunlight, and that unlocked another memory. Because along with the name Jace Herondale plastered all over Tumblr, I think I remember seeing something along the lines of Jace maybe being an actual angel, which would make sense, you know, because all Simon did was drink his blood, and now he can withstand sunlight. So the mystery around Jace continues. At least I think I'm gonna find out what he is in this book, because like I said, there's a lot that I don't remember from the previous two books. I didn't even remember how Valentine even got the sword in City of Ashes, so I was looking for a very detailed spoiler-filled review online the other day, and I couldn't find one like I wanted, but I did find what I was looking for. I think it was someone's blog, and they put everything into topics, which was very helpful. And they talk about that scene in City of Ashes when Jake? Who's Jake? They were talking about that scene in City of Ashes when Jace escapes the makeshift prison that the Inquisitor makes for him, which should have been impossible because he jumps at an absurd height. Obviously, it shouldn't have been possible for him to do that, even if he is a very skilled and talented shadow hunter. So ever since that moment, I think that's when it started to hint towards him being like an angel or something. You know what? Now that I think about it, when you look at the cover of City of Heavenly Fire, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Jason and Clary, and there are literally wings on his back. But yeah, anyway, the person who wrote these topics on the City of Ashes review on that blog post mentions that we're gonna find out why he was able to do that in this book. We're gonna find out what he is in this book. So I'm very much looking forward to that, because at least that's part of the mystery out of the way, I think. I think it's still gonna be a while until I find out how he's a Herondale. I remember someone saying in a reading vlog many years ago that for anyone who got the hardcover copy of Clockwork Princess to not look at the end page before finishing the book, because then it would spoil the story for them. In regards to like a family tree, I think, because I think on the hardcover edition there's a family tree on this part of the book, and I think it might have something to do with that, but I'm obviously not entirely sure. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna find out how or why Jace is a Herondale until either the very end of the Infernal Devices or until the second part of the Mortal Instruments. So I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that I'm gonna find out what he is in this book, because then at least partially I'll know something. So I don't know if Jace is actually literally an angel, but I think there's something to that extent. All of this might sound so stupid and so obvious to everyone who has already finished the series, so while I don't entirely know what to expect, there are a few things for me to keep an eye out for. Right now I'm on chapter 6, I just started it last night, and I gotta say, I'm not loving Jace in this book. I did say in the introduction that him and his story was one of the main reasons that got me back into reading the Mortal Instruments, but he's kind of getting on my nerves. So yeah, right now I just feel really bad for Simon. He keeps talking to this other guy who's also in prison. What's his name? Samuel Beckett? No, that's the playwright. Samuel Blackburn. His name is Samuel Blackburn. He's in prison because he was a part of the circle with Valentine, and he was one of the Shadowhunters who didn't turn their backs on Valentine. So he and Simon have been having some conversations through the wall, but I don't know much about him yet. Other than that, I'm really intrigued, really curious about Sebastian. I hope I get to know more about him soon. And I guess that's it for now. I'm gonna keep reading, and then if there are any major developments, I'll come back with more updates. Something's up with Sebastian. It's been a few weeks since I've last updated, but I finally made it to part 2 and there are a few things that I would like to talk about. Sorry if the audio is too weird or just not very good, I don't have my microphone with me, but I would still like to update. First off, I feel like I keep explaining things very poorly, so let me backtrack really quickly regarding Simon and the Inquisitor. So the Inquisitor is kind of desperate for answers about what happened on the ship in New York, and he's very heavily implied to Simon that the Clave believes, or could very easily be made to believe, that Simon is a spy for Valentine. And so, in order to let Simon off the hook, the Inquisitor wants Simon to lie to the Clave and tell them that everything that happened on the ship in New York was the Lightwood's fault. Because since people already have a hard time trusting the Lightwoods again, and they would have no issue believing that, then they could do anything that they want to deal with this situation. Simon obviously refuses to do that, and that's why the Inquisitor is keeping him captive and starving him until he decides to cooperate. Now, some other things have happened, and I'm not entirely sure where to start. I guess let's start with Jace, because I finally got to the infamous line, that infamous scene when he says that to Clary. I desperately need Jace and Clary to stop kissing each other while they still think they're related, which I don't think is a lot to ask for, but it keeps happening. It keeps happening. I know that technically on the Silly Court in City of Ashes they didn't really have a choice because they were trying to get Clary out of there, but you know what? I would have stayed. I would have stayed down there. You know, if a group of Fae trapped me somewhere and the only way to get me out of it was to kiss someone that I thought was related to me, I'm staying. I'm staying there. Keep me for as long as you need. They can find some other way to get me out, and if there is no other way to get me out, then this is my home now. This is where I live. Clearly, they used a different strategy in the book, but can they please stop doing that? My god. That was a hard scene to read. And honestly, I don't know what's worse, if it's the fact that they keep making out while they think they're siblings, or if it's the fact that Jace tried to justify his attraction to Clary on the demon blood that he thinks he has in him. But also, why was that the first thing that he immediately latched onto after everything that happened on the Wayland Manor? Okay, let's backtrack really quickly. So Clary and Sebastian go to meet Ragnar Fell, but it turns out he's dead. They get to his cabin in the woods, and who comes out of the house if not the one and only Magnus Bane? But Sebastian doesn't know that it's Magnus because he's never met Magnus. He thinks it's Ragnar Fell. So Magnus freezes Sebastian because he doesn't want Sebastian to know that he's not Ragnar Fell, and he takes Clary inside to talk to her about what happened. Turns out some of Valentine's men, or one of Valentine's men, someone who works for Valentine, found Ragnar Fell at his house and killed him. And before that happened, Ragnar Fell left a hidden message for the next wizard who found him, letting him know what happened. And it just happened to be Magnus because Ragnar Fell contacted him the night before, I think, asking him to meet him. So now that Ragnar Fell is dead, technically there's no one left to help Clary wake her mother. But then Magnus tells her that there is this book of spells, which is probably the most powerful book, or I think it's one of the most powerful books. I think there are two, maybe, and this is one of them. It's called the Book of White, and it contains the recipe for the potion that Jocelyn took that made her fall into this magic coma, and it has the recipe for the antidote to wake her up. And it tells Clary that the Book of White is actually hidden in the Wayland Manor because Jocelyn hid it inside a recipe book so that Valentine wouldn't be suspicious of it and wouldn't go looking for it. And if Clary gets Magnus the book, then he will help her prepare the antidote to wake Jocelyn up if he gets to keep the book afterwards, because it technically belongs to the Warlocks. So after a while, Clary and Jace go to the Wayland Manor because there are wards all around the house and he's the only one who could get in. They find stuff. They find the book. But they also find a lot more than that. Down in the basement, they find, chained up, an angel. An actual, real angel. And this angel shows them visions of things that happened in the past with Valentine and about Valentine, and how he had been tortured and been kept prisoner there for I don't even know how long. And Jace had told Clary, I think in book 1 or 2, that no one has seen an actual angel in I also don't remember how long. It just had been a really long time since anyone has seen an actual angel. So they find an actual angel chained up, tortured, who shows them visions of a bunch of important things that happened in the past, including what Valentine did to his firstborn son, and Jocelyn wanted to flee precisely because of what he did to their child. And Jace's immediate reaction after everything crumbles apart, because the mansion is tied to the angel and the angel can finally get his rest in peace. This angel has been wanting to die for years because it's only being tortured. It's only being kept there for torture and imprisonment. So Claire and Jace help the angel die, but the mansion and the angel are tied. So once the angel is dead, the entire Wayland Manor starts crumbling apart, and so they have to flee, obviously. And the first thing immediately that Jace starts talking about, after all of that is reviewed, is, oh, you know what? It makes sense now why am I attracted to you, my sister. It's because I have demon blood in me. So now we can do whatever we want, because this is the only reason why I'm attracted to you. So it's not so bad. We can now act on our feelings because now we know the reason why I like you, my sister. I still cannot believe that I read this. To be fair, he does have a moment of slight existential crisis, because one of the things that the angel shows them is Valentine talking to a demon in the forest, and this demon lady is giving him her blood that he's going to inject on his firstborn, which everyone at this point in the story thinks it's Jace. So he does have a moment of slight existential crisis of being like, oh my god, what the hell did he do to me? I'm part monster. Part of me is the same things that I have been hunting my entire life. There's a part of me that is everything that I've tried my entire life to destroy. So that does happen for like a minute or two, but it is over so quickly. I wish I was making this up. That was a really hard scene to read. So yeah, they start making out again, but Clary eventually shuts it off, not for the right reasons, no, because she realizes that he's trying to use this whole thing as a way to hit on himself even more, and she doesn't want to be a part of it, so she shuts it down, and he just gets very pleasant, you know, in his usual Jace Wayland fashion. So they start walking back to the city, and once they get there, they realize it's on fire. Alicante is on fire. They don't know yet what it is, but it's demons. There are demons attacking the city. Which now leads me to Sebastian, because there are some very interesting things happening with Sebastian. I have some new theories, and they feel kind of wacky, but the more I read, the less I think they're that wacky. Bear with me. So, when Sebastian and Clary kiss for the first time, after he takes her to see the ruins of the Fairchild Manor, by the way, honestly, what goes on? What goes on in these people's minds? I know they're teenagers, and I know they're not exactly normal teenagers because, you know, they were raised to hunt demons and monsters and all of that, but this guy, after he takes her to see Ragnarfell and it all goes to crap, he decides that it was a terrific idea to take Clary to see the remnants of the burned down house where her mother used to live in and where she almost died. Without even checking with her first, like, hey, is that something that you would be interested in seeing to try and make out something of your mother's past or whatever? No, he just takes her there unprompted. You know, what a nice surprise. In the end, she was okay with it, but okay, anyway, so they have a moment there in the ruins and they end up kissing, and while they're kissing, Clary starts feeling like something's very wrong, like awfully wrong, like she just feels bad, she feels wrong all of a sudden. And the way the whole scene was written and the way she was wording things just made something pop into my head that I don't know if it's correct, okay? It didn't come to me in a dream because I wasn't sleeping, but it was really out of nowhere. But it got me thinking, what if Sebastian is Clary's brother? What if Sebastian is Valentine's and Jocelyn's firstborn? the one that Valentine experimented on. The other thing that I thought about was, what if maybe he's a demon, or like part demon? And then I thought that maybe he wasn't even Sebastian at all. Maybe the real Sebastian was locked away somewhere and this was a demon impersonating him. But it turns out that Isabel wears a necklace that starts acting up whenever there are demons around, and she's been around him for days and nothing happened. So I think maybe I can scrap that one. But the other two, I think there might be something there. I think maybe I'm not that far off. It might not be that wacky anymore with everything that's been happening. Also, when they're kissing, Clare touches his hair, and afterwards when they're getting back to the horse, she looks at her fingertips and they're black. So two things came to mind, and they also seem so stupid and silly. But the first thing I thought of was demon essence. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I've got. And the second one seems even more far-fetched and even sillier, but black hair dye. Because if he is Valentine and Jocelyn's firstborn, maybe he's blonde, maybe he's a redhead and he dyes his hair black. I know that one is a stretch, because unless he had just come from dyeing his hair with really bad hair dye, that wouldn't have happened. The hair dye wouldn't just be coming out on Claire's fingers because she touched it. Unless he's using really, really bad hair dye. Even if it's black hair dye, it has to be really bad for that to happen. So while for the stained fingertips, I only have silly theories. I think for Sebastian, I might be onto something. Because one of the things that I think the demon lady says to Valentine when she's giving Valentine the blood for him to infuse into his child is that he's gonna lose all of his humanity. And Sebastian reacted very aggressively and in a very weird way when Clary stopped kissing him and told him that it just felt wrong. I also went back to check something else, and when they were riding to Ragnarfel's house, they started talking about Jace and Valentine, and Sebastian talks about how being back in Alicante must be not very good, not very pleasant for Jace because he was raised there by Valentine, and those can be very good memories. And Clary starts telling him about how it's a very complicated situation and how Jace has mixed feelings about it because, well, yes, Valentine is obviously a horrible person and was a horrible father. He was also the only one to show some kind of love and affection towards Jace when he was a child, and for a long time that was the only kind of affection and love that Jace knew. And Sebastian reacts again in a very weird way. He's like very firm in saying like, no, that's impossible. Valentine can't love anything. Like, I can't believe that Valentine would ever show Jace any kindness or love. He's a monster. And Clary ends up just chalking that up to Shadowhunters being kind of crazy when it comes to the topic of Valentine. But what if it's first-hand experience? What if he reacts like that? Because he was the one to be on the receiving end of all of the crap that Valentine did when he was a child. Because he's the firstborn. I don't know, it seems wacky, but with everything that's been happening, I feel like it might be possible. I have started tabbing some scenes and dialogues about and with Sebastian when I realized that there could be something more to it. And the quote at the beginning of part 2 is a quote from Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, and it's literally a character called Sebastian talking about the malignancy of his fate and how he wants to be left alone to deal with his evils alone. Is it too on the nose? Is it too on the nose to be what I think it is? Because it feels too obvious. You know, the guy's literally called Sebastian. I haven't read Twelfth Night, but it's his name. Is it like the lake? Again, is it too on the nose? Am I that far off from the truth? I don't feel like I am, but like I keep saying, I'm never good at figuring out this stuff in books. So maybe it's something else entirely. But, you know, he did just hit Isabel with a hammer. So I don't feel like I'm that far off. Even if it's not that, there's obviously something up with him. Alec left to try and find Aline, who was attacked by a demon, and Isabel and Aline killed the demon, but then Aline just ran off. He just took off somewhere. Isabel couldn't find her. They went back to the house. Alec went back out to try and find Elaine. Isabel went up to get more weapons and her steel, and she left Max, her baby brother, with Sebastian in the living room while he was fixing the broken window and guarding the house with rooms. When she comes back down, they're not in the living room, but she hears Sebastian in the kitchen. He talks to her and it's his voice. But everything's dark. She can't see anything. So she doesn't see if it's actually Sebastian. Like I said, maybe it's someone else or something else impersonating his voice. Whatever it is, if it's a demon, if it's actually him having demon blood in him or whatever else, he just hit Isabel with a hammer. So something's up with that guy. I'm now even more curious to know what's going on and what is happening. So I'm gonna keep reading to find out. I hope my theories are not too wacky, but if they are, they're probably never gonna see the light of day. You're kidding me. You're kidding me. I was being so unserious when I said that, and you're telling me I'm right? I was right about this. There's no way. This can't be real. I finished it. I finished it 2 days ago, so I had some time to gather my thoughts and my feelings, and now we're gonna talk about it. I actually haven't updated in quite a while, so I have a lot to talk about. So if someone is still following along on this journey, buckle up because I'm gonna start yapping. Let's start with Max Lightwood, Isabel and Alec's little brother. I hate it. I hate that she did that. Every time now when I see a character dying, especially when it's a younger character, I immediately think about Suzanne Collins talking about how she always knew what was going to happen to Prim because that was always the whole point of the Hunger Games. And then I think about the way she talked about other characters that also died, that maybe didn't necessarily need to die, but that's just what happens in a war. They all serve a purpose in a way. It's never pointless. Everything that she does in her books has a purpose. And so that's kind of become like the standard for me when it comes to things like this in other medias. And Max, there is no purpose to killing off Max. I really do feel like it was just done for a shock factor because, you know, he's a child. So when you're reading a book, even if it's a fantasy book or whatever, you expect the child to be safe, you know? You don't think that the child is ever going to die. And immediately when it happened, I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way. He's not dead. He's not dead. He's just severely injured. But no, he was in fact very much dead. And so I started trying to think what could come of this, you know, like maybe this is gonna propel Isabel and Alec in some different way. This is definitely going to change them as people, so maybe that's gonna impact the story somehow. But no, none of that happens. We barely get to see Isabel during the final fight. We don't get to see Alec at all, which is something else that I'm gonna touch on later. It served no purpose. He just died. And even if she did it as like a way to show Sebastian's lack of humanity, you know, because he killed a child, I also don't think it works very well. I think there were so many different ways and so many other ways that she could have shown his lack of humanity, and this didn't have to be one of them, especially because right after he kills Max, he knocks out Isabel. But he lets her live. And then later on when they meet, he keeps acting like he regrets not killing her. And he keeps saying stuff like, oh, I should have killed you too. And like, yeah, why didn't you? If the point was to show his lack of humanity, why didn't he kill both Isabel and Max? No, he just killed the child. She just had him kill the child because that's what would be most impactful when you're reading the story. That's what's gonna make you stop mid-paragraph and go, there's no way this just happened. I still haven't looked it up. I still haven't read if she said anything about it. Maybe something else is still gonna come of it in the second half of this series, but considering this was going to be a trilogy originally and this was the last book, I highly doubt that it was done with that purpose. I really do think it was just for shock factor, and I absolutely hate it. Well, moving on to other things, otherwise I might be here forever. Samuel Blackwell, I never remember his name. It's not important. Turns out he was just Hodge, which, okay, I mean, I thought he had died. I don't remember if we were supposed to think he had died and this was supposed to be like some big revelation. I don't really care about Hodge, but he did come through in the end, because in the 2 to 5 pages after we find out it's Hodge, he confirmed basically every single one of the theories I had. So I did like him for that. So I was right about the lake being the mirror, which I feel like it was pretty obvious, but like I said, I'm never right about these things. So it felt really good. It felt pretty good seeing that it's actually what it was. And the whole Sebastian / Jonathan thing is better confirmed later on in the book, but something that he said and that he did in the scene where he's dying was enough to confirm it for me, because as he's dying after he was hit with, I think it was a dagger, he looks towards the forest and he sees Sebastian and he says, Jonathan. And Jace thinks he's talking to him, asking for help, and then he goes to help Hodge, but then he's like, no, not you. And Jace misinterprets that as it being, my god, this man is so disgusted by me and he hates me so much that he doesn't even want my help. Alec, you come help him, please. No, it obviously wasn't that at all, because he looks from Jace to Sebastian when he says Jonathan. So he's obviously calling Sebastian Jonathan. And that is all it was. And that was all it took for me to know for sure that I was also correct about Sebastian. Which I have to say makes me feel pretty good. I feel like all of my theories about Sebastian were correct. I just didn't connect them very well, because I said that I thought he was Clary's brother, Jonathan. And then I also had my 2 other theories that maybe he wasn't Sebastian at all. I thought the real Sebastian was locked away somewhere and he was impersonating Sebastian, and that maybe it was like a demon. And all of that was correct. I just didn't connect them at all. It was like 2 separate theories that I had. I just had to put them together, but they were all right. I was right. Which, again, I feel like it was pretty obvious and that you were supposed to come to this conclusion by yourself before the big reveal and the plot twist, but I'll keep saying it never happens to me, so I'm very happy that I got everything right. But absolutely nothing shocked me more than being right about the black hair dye. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I still can believe. I still can believe that it's real and that's actually what it was. So I am so sorry, but I am gonna have to go on a tangent about black hair dye. Listen, I don't know if black hair dye is different in the US or if Cassandra Clare just doesn't know how black hair dye works, but it's not like this. I've been getting my hair dyed for a very long time, okay? The first time I ever got my hair dyed, I was 13, I think. And I'm obviously not a professional or an expert, but when you've been getting your hair dyed for this long, you kind of pick up a few things along the way. And I've had my hair dyed black twice. Once was in 2015 and I got the whole thing because it was a little bit shorter and I just wanted my whole hair to be black. And last year when I did this half and half Cruella de Vil thing, I wanted this side to be really black to contrast with the bleach side, because even though my natural hair is a darker shade of brown, it's not that dark and I really wanted that sharp contrast. So twice in my life have I dyed my hair black, and let me tell you, it does not come off on your fingers like that. Like when you're in the process of getting it dyed or dyeing it yourself, then absolutely you're gonna get something stained black. You're gonna look at your purse or at your finger or anything that was near you during that process. It can be like 3 days later, you're gonna see black dye on it. It can also happen when you wash it after you let it sit in your hair the recommended amount of time. It can also still happen after the first time you wash it, like the first wash after getting your hair dyed. If your towel is a very light color, then yes, it might stain it. But if it's dry, it's not gonna stain anything. It's not gonna come off on your fingers like that just because you did this. So this scene, I don't understand this scene. Like she just touched his hair like very lightly and black hair that came off on her fingers. Like, no, that's not how it works. That is absolutely not how it works, unless he did it with like this paper. I don't know what it's called in English, I don't remember, but sometimes I don't know if that's a common thing anywhere else, but here, when we were children and we wanted to get colorful hair but our parents wouldn't let us because, you know, it's a lot of chemistry to go into children's hair, we would use this to get some color in our hairs. So unless he did it with this, the black one, it wouldn't come off on her fingers. That is just so stupid. And yes, I do realize, okay, that this tangent is also really stupid, because who cares, it's just hair dye. But as someone who has been getting her hair dyed for a really long time, I just could not believe that that's actually what it was. Like, it was the silliest thing ever. I was reading it and then I thought, oh, you know what, maybe it's black hair dye, huh? But I never expected it to be correct. I was so much more certain about the demon essence than this, but here we are. Oh, also, after he flees, after he kills Hodge, Jay sees him like the next day or 2 days afterwards, and his hair is already like this color, is already super duper white. Again, that is also not happening with black hair dye, okay? If you put black hair dye on your hair, it's staying for at least a year. At least a year, okay? So either he's using incredibly cheap, poorly made hair dye, this paper, or I don't know what this woman thinks black hair dye does, but it's not that. Okay, now let's move on to things that are actually important, that actually matter regarding Sebastian/Jonathan. I'm not sure if I like his character very much anymore. Before we get to the actual reveal in the book and the plot twist, and he reveals to everyone that yes, he's an imposter, he's working for Valentine, and then later on that he's Jonathan, I was actually really enjoying his character and I wanted to know more about him. But after the big reveal, it just feels like he was a caricature of something that should have been greater. The way everyone and the narration talks about Jonathan makes it seem like he was supposed to be like the big villain of the story, you know, like even Valentine seems to be scared of him sometimes. Well, maybe not scared, but I feel like he's wary of Jonathan because he's so unpredictable. So for me personally, I do feel like Jonathan was supposed to be this big villain, even bigger than Valentine, but that's not at all how it went and what happened. I just feel like he became a little bit silly, actually. Like, I don't know, the way she started to portray him after he revealed to everyone he was Jonathan Morgenstern wasn't what I expected it to be. Like, I expected someone like Valentine, but worse, but honestly, he just felt like a cartoon villain most of the time to me, which is not very good. I don't think when you're writing a story like this, I don't think that's what you want for one of your biggest villains, but that's what it felt like. Also, again, I will reiterate that there were so many other ways that she could have portrayed his lack of humanity instead of just having him kill a child and constantly call Isabel a bitch, but that's what she chose to do. That's how she chose to write him. I don't know, I was just really upset because I feel like he could have been such an interesting character and we could have gotten so much more from him, but that's all we got. Also, the way he died, way too fast. Honestly, him and Valentine, the way both of them went, I don't like it. It was way too quick. It was over way too quickly. It is said towards the end that I think a group of Shadowhunters went back to the river where his body was and they didn't find anything. His body wasn't there, and so they just think that it went down the river, the stream carried it away. And Jace is like, yeah, I don't buy that. And honestly, me neither. I don't buy that. I think there's a chance that he might still be alive, and if he is, then he's probably gonna come back in the second part of this series, right? Which was one of the things that I was wondering about after I finished reading the book, because it wraps up pretty nicely, you know, like I don't think it's a great ending if this was how it was originally supposed to end. Like, I do feel like there are still some loose ends and things that could have been done better, but all in all, I guess it is a decent ending, you know. It does leave you feeling off like, oh, okay, I guess things turned out well in the end. So I was wondering what was going to happen in the second half of the series. So if Jonathan is still alive, I think it might have to do with that. And I'm kind of hoping it's that, but at the same time, I feel like it would just be a repeat of Valentine. So I don't know. I'm just gonna have to wait and see what she does in the second half of this series. I'm also upset at how the final battle went down, because this was supposed to be like the big battle, right? They're finally facing Valentine. Shadowhunters and Downworlders are finally working together to take down the biggest villain that they have ever met, probably in their lives, that has been haunting and hunting the society for decades at this point. Nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. We just follow Jace and Clary all the time, and we don't see anything else. Like, this was supposed to be such a big moment. Again, Shadowhunters and Downworlders fighting side by side. I feel like we were supposed to see more of that. We only see it for like 2 pages when Simon is rescued by a Shadowhunter, and then he immediately dies. The Shadowhunter, not Simon. And even that too, with Simon, he's so lost during this battle, and he quickly starts to realize that he's gonna have to embrace his vampiric side to fight alongside with the Shadowhunters and help win this thing. And he starts coming to terms with that, and we see him start acting on it. And then it's over. It's literally only like half a page that we see him go through this thought process. And then it never goes back to that. We don't see him fight anymore. We don't see him embrace this side of him anymore. It's just gone. We don't ever get to see Alec and Magnus fighting side by side in this battle, which I feel like would have been so great, especially after Alec made it public that he and Magnus were together. We don't even get their names anywhere in these pages during the battle. The same thing goes for Jocelyn and Luke. Jocelyn finally came back, and she's fighting in this battle against her ex-husband, who's a maniac, and she's fighting alongside her lifelong best friend who she's in love with and who is in love with her, and they might both die. I feel like the stakes were so high for all of these characters, and we never get to see them during what was supposed to be the most important moment in this book. The whole time, we're just following Jason and Clary, which obviously it's okay for a while because, they're also having important moments and important battles. Jace is fighting Jonathan and Clary goes after Valentine, so of course it's important. But it's not all that I want to read about. I want to see what the other characters are going through. I want to see how they're dealing with this fight. We only get to see Isabel for like a page and a half when she comes to Jace's rescue. That's not what I want. I want to read about them fighting. I want to see her actually taking revenge on Sebastian for what he did to her brother. Cutting off his hand and then immediately being beat up, it's not that. It's really not it. So yeah, I really didn't get what I wanted from this final battle. I genuinely think it could have been so much better. I feel like she could have written this from so many different angles, but unfortunately we only got Jason and Clary's perspectives. And again, the whole thing was over so quickly. They even say themselves, like, I don't think it even lasted 10 minutes. Again, this is like the villain, okay? The main villain of the whole trilogy, and he dies within a page. I think it takes him like a paragraph to die, and it's an angel that kills him, so it's over very quickly. There is no struggle, there is no fight. He just dies. Also, I have to say, Clary thinks about Jace way too much. Like, way too much. Like, her mother came back, something that she's been wanting and trying to do since book 1, and she just kept thinking about Jace. Like, girl, that's not the time. That is not the time or the place. It's not the moment. I really don't like the way she reacted when Jocelyn came back. Like, I understand. I get that she's angry and she obviously gets to be angry, but not even a hug first? Not even a hug, some tears, some, oh my god, you're finally back. No, she just immediately got very angry and very upset and thinking about Jace. But there was an upside. There is a bright side to this book because I finally have some breakthrough regarding Jace. I said at the beginning I didn't think I was going to find out who his parents were in this book, but I did, and I actually should have guessed it too, honestly, because Stephen and his late wife were being mentioned way too much for it to just be a coincidence, like the lake, but that's fine. That's one thing that got me by surprise, and I really enjoyed it. I'm still unclear on whether his actually an angel. Like, he does have angel blood in him more than the regular Shadowhunter does, but I don't know how we go from that to him having wings in the cover of the last book. There is a moment during his fight with Jonathan that like he can't stand to walk anymore. He's trying to get to Jonathan when he's beating the crap out of Isabel to try and help her, but Jace was almost dying at this point, and he's struggling, but he can't do it. And then something propels him forward, and in my mind in that moment I thought it was his wings coming out for the first time and, pushing him forward to do that, especially because of the way the whole thing is written. And he feels something on his back. He feels like a weight. So I genuinely thought that's what it was going to be, but I don't think it was. I'm still not sure what it was, because Isabel was looking at him in that moment. So I think she would have said something if there were wings on his back, and she doesn't. No one ever says anything to that matter. So I don't know what it was, but I guess it wasn't that. So I don't know how we're going to get to this point, but that's fine. I'm gonna find out when I read the other books. Something else that I kept thinking every time Valentine showed up on the page and opened his mouth is that, my God, this man is insane. I feel like that's pretty obvious, right? With everything that he's doing and that he's done in the past. It's obviously that he's not very well, but the more he talked, the more I realized how insane and delusional this man is. I don't think I have ever seen a delusional gaslighter combo this strong before. I still might find characters like that in books that I read from now on. This man genuinely thinks that the only reason why Jocelyn hates him and left him is because of Clary. Because she didn't want Clary to turn out like Jonathan, and so she left so Valentine wouldn't do anything to her. And so because of that, he hates Clary. And I was just reading that like, there is no way. You're telling me if Clary never existed, if Jocelyn had never gotten pregnant and had Clary, this man genuinely thought he could win her back somehow. After everything he did, like, you experimented on your pregnant wife and your unborn child. Then you kept on experimenting on your child after he was born, and you kept experimenting on your wife with a different kind of blood. She found his weird, creepy lab in the basement. I'm pretty sure she saw Ethereal. And this man genuinely believes that if it wasn't for Clary, he could have won her back. He could have found a way to make Jocelyn love him again and be with him again. I feel like at some point he was actively working towards that goal, like to winning Jocelyn back after she woke up from her magic coma. Like, also the way he keeps talking about the situation the Shadowhunters are in right now, as if he's not the one who caused it. I made this stupid little meme after I finished one of the chapters, because that's basically what he was saying. Like, this man has been hunting and killing Shadowhunters who disagree with him for decades, and then he turns around and blames it on the werewolves and the vampires and on the Shadowhunters who let those in and who agreed to live with them. Crazy. This man is crazy. I didn't think I would ever find someone more delusional than Alexander Hamilton, thinking that Angelica came back from London for him after he cheats on his wife, her sister, and publicly announces it to the whole world. I found him. Never in my life did I think I would be comparing Alexander Hamilton to Valentine Morgenstern, but I think this book fried a few of my brain cells. I think it made me a little bit insane too. There's something else that I forgot to talk about earlier, so I just wanted to pop in here again really quickly because I just thought it was so bizarre. But I read 2 books back to back with incestuous themes, a secret second brother, and severed hands. Just like the Hamilton thing, never in my life did I think there were going to be any similarities between City of Glass and Strange Houses. But here we are. It was still incredibly entertaining, but I do feel like a lot of times throughout this book, I was left with that feeling of, what the hell did I just read? I know there's quite a few different ways and orders in which you can read the motor instruments and the infernal devices. The one I'm doing is, I think, the most common one. I finished City of Glass, so now I'm gonna move on to the infernal devices, and then I'm gonna read the second half of the motor instruments. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I still don't have Clockwork Angel with me, and I did just spend the last 3 months reading this book, so I would like to take a break from it just for a while, but I also don't want to read just 1 or 2 books from this universe per year, otherwise I feel like I'm never going to finish it. So I don't have any immediate plans to jump into the Infernal Devices right away, but I hope it can still happen this year, at least the first book. I'm definitely not going to be able to read the entire trilogy this year, but I hope at least the first book, maybe. I'm still shocked at the amount of things I got right in this book, but nothing will ever shock me more than the black hair dye. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. If you watched this whole thing, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was fun. I had a lot of fun reading this book and filming this vlog, and I hope the next ones are just as entertaining for me. Well, I'm gonna go now. I hope you had a great week. I hope you keep reading books you like, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.